Okay, welcome one and all. Obviously, apologies, some of you are going to have to listen to my rambling again because I have to go through it each time. So we have got obviously a few different officers. Welcome to a couple of members of the public and obviously a couple of different councillors have joined us this afternoon. So welcome to you all. So I'd just like to remind those joining remotely to mute their microphone and turn off their camera unless speaking. Please be reminded that the meeting is being live streamed. All speakers are asked to ensure they are talking into their microphone. We are not expecting the fire alarm. Should the fire alarm sound, please exit the room and follow me. No, seriously, you can find your own way. You don't have to be behind me. The fire exit signs to the right. Please congregate on the Cover lawn. Please ensure you address everyone by their full title of councillor. No first names, including myself. How many times did I fail this morning? Okay. The chair assumes that members have read all the papers in advance of the committee. Therefore, obviously, please, well, just be prepared. And as I said this morning, I know many members have got other meetings later in the day, childcare responsibilities. So if we can keep our questions and our answers as distinct as possible, that would really quite useful in getting us away and at a reasonable time. And a final reminder is to not hold individual conversations while others are speaking. So I'll go into the formal part now, which is apologies for absence. I've got councillors Tildesley, Trail and Rousel. I think, are there any others? I think we're full apart from that. That's brilliant. Declarations of interest. Just to remind you all to declare interest at the appropriate time. And our next item is the minutes. So can I sign as a correct record the minutes of the 21st of November 2025? Are you all happy that I sign those as a correct record? Thank you. I'll do that in a minute when I've got a moment. So just to move on. Items requiring urgent attention. I don't believe there are any. No, sorry. That's all right. Chair's announcements, again, none. Public participation, we have had no notification of public participation, so that carries forward. And matters for, so into the main part of the agenda now, which is matters for information. And the first item on our agenda for this afternoon, which officially is agenda item 6, I want to say, but I might be wrong. 7, sorry, not a bad guess, is a report of the children's scrutiny session, SEND and EHCP insights and Devon's improvement journey. So I'll introduce Kelly in a moment. So just to give you all a bit of context on this, it was a really, really valuable session. There was a group of parents that had written into either Denise as the cabinet member, myself in my day job with the MP, etc., who obviously had experienced our systems and weren't just complaining, they were offering constructive advice. And obviously we would like to think it's all in the past, but I think it is useful to reflect on the experiences of parents and professionals. So they weren't all parents. There was a Senko from a school, for instance. So they were able to share with us their experience and obviously their thoughts on how things should be going forward. So, and like I say, I want to just context that probably most of those experiences were before this administration was in place. And we're, as we heard this morning, and we've had in other meetings, there's been an awful lot of improvement. We are on that journey, but at the same time, I think it's really useful to hear what experiences people have been through. So I'm going to introduce Kelly. So Kelly is representing that group of 5 that were our panel, if you like. So Kelly sat over here to her right. Unfortunately, the members probably can't see you very well, but yeah, no, she is here to her right. So Kelly, the people that you are sat alongside are our councillors, and then on this side predominantly we have our senior officers, mixed in with the 2 cabinet members, Councillor Jeffries for social care and Councillor Bickley for SEND, and then you've got Councillor Brazil who does education, sat at the end, and Christina, welcome Christina. She's an independent member to the committee. She does sit on the committee and as an independent member from the Church of England. Is that right? That's right. So Kelly, welcome, and thank you very much for. She's come all the way from Bury Narber. So when I moan about North Devon, this is in the proper north of Devon, and quite a trip. So really appreciate you taking the time and to drive all the way down. And you're going to talk to us about the paper that the members have got before us, and on behalf of the group. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, my name is Kelly. I am a parent of my son Joshua, who has had an EHCP/statement since he was 4.5. He's now 21 years old. He has been failed throughout his education, apart from the last couple of years. But as parents, on a personal view, it has been a really long uphill struggle to get him what he needs in accordance to him as an individual, rather than what the curriculum would like. So he didn't fit the system, and with many of the other mums and group that we met with, they haven't had success with the education system either. As a professional, I see the same patterns daily happening throughout Devon. Children are being failed throughout Devon because of not enough understanding within schools of SEND, not enough training of the teachers within SEND, EHCPs taking far longer than they should, and the children not getting the support that they need within school. The education system actually isn't working for many children now. EHCPs do matter though, because they are the only thing that makes support clear and enforceable. Without them, support depends on capacity and understanding, which is lacking due to training and the lack of screening for neurodiversities within school. With an EHCP, there is accountability for families like ours and for many families within Devon and the wider UK when the system doesn't work well together. The EHCPs are needed, but they can't fix everything on their own. So schools and learning should be fun. Many children are expected to sit down, follow script rules for most of the day, suppressing natural behaviour. Some schools are even removing break times as a punishment for this behaviour. And when you're dealing with SEND, break times are actually the most important time to be able to to regulate themselves. So from the evidence gathered at our meeting, from my personal lived experience and professional work, and the opinions, it's just not working. The system is just not working for neurodiverse children, and there are many more neurodiverse children within society today than there has ever been. And I think there is probably more, but there isn't enough screening to see exactly what's going on and the exact figures. The systems now are too rigid, which is causing more children needing an EHCP because there is no flexibility within schools. And if the structure wasn't so rigid, then EHCPs wouldn't be needed as much. I've actually proposed, and some of you have had my proposal, and I will forward it on to you after this if needed, but I've put forward a pilot school that concentrates on learning styles rather than curriculum based. Age, you must do this, you must sit down, you must get a GCSEs. I've put together a learning style system where children flourish in what they love, therefore they start enjoying learning. Learning should be fun. Nobody learns if it's too rigid. We're seeing in Devon, we are seeing more children unable to attend school. I've actually got some figures. Excuse me for a second. There were 2,951 children home educated within Devon in 2025. I haven't updated my figures, and that's a 20% increase in the last 5 years. Children are talking with their feet. There are so many children that are not in school because they cannot cope through EBSA, through misunderstanding, through not training of other people, through not having an EHCP so that they don't have their support needs catered for. I reiterate that the current model is outdated and not fit for purpose. If school felt safer, more flexible, more engaging, more children would be in school, because that's what children want to do. Children are like sponges. They want to learn. They don't want to be told to sit still. Inclusion isn't just about placing children in a mainstream school. It's about changing how learning happens for each child. More movement, more play, more hands-on learning, more flexibility, more screening, so that we know exactly how the child's brains works. Small changes, outdoor learning, practical lessons can stop needs escalating before children reach crisis point, and we have so many children in crisis point now. I do believe, and as our group that met believe, that EHCPs do need to stay because they're very, very important. However, the wider education system also needs changing. It should sit within a modern child-centred system. They only get one childhood, they only get one education. We need a system that works for today's children, not one that they're trying to escape.
Kelly, very good. Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And I think, as we said at the roundtable session, it was a difficult listen, and I think it and it is a true reflection of what we have heard about Devon, going back. And I think, it is our commitment. I think probably Julian and Jack will come in a minute, but certainly is a commitment of this council, and I mean all councillors cross party, that we do better, and we do provide those all inclusive learning communities. And I know from my own experience, everything you said rang true, because what kept me going back to school was it was a football match or a cricket match, because that's where I really flourished. But of course, I had to go there and attend lessons to be able to do the football and the cricket. So it just about got me through school. And so I think, you are right. And we talked about it at length actually this morning, about so many children can't take part in after school activities because of transport, and it's going to become a focus. So that's my preamble. Obviously, I don't know if at this stage whether Jack or Julian or Denise want to come back.
Thank you. I won't at this stage, if that's okay, Chair, but thank you very much, Kelly. That was, it's always fantastic to get the humans. We get lots of papers with numbers and things like that, but it's lovely to hear that. Well, quite disturbing sometimes, but it's good to hear the human side of it and the cost of it. So that makes us understand that we actually are dealing with people here and people's lives. So I think that's really brings it into focus and put it. But I'm going to make most of my comments probably in the paper that's coming up. I think it's agenda item 8 or whatever. So I'll wait till then, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Julian. Denise?
I just want to say thank you to Kelly. It takes guts to do that. It's quite intimidating in here, so thank you so much for doing that. I will forward your proposal around to the group as well. Yeah, and I can't disagree with anything you're saying. So I think what we can do within Devon we'll do, and what's national we'll push for. So yeah, thanks.
Members, have you anybody got any questions? I mean, you've got the paper before you. I don't want you really questioning Kelly or giving her a hard time. We can leave that for the officers. But yeah, I mean, if has anybody got any questions or comment to what Kelly's just said? Thank you, Councillor Lodge.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great, Kelly. It really was, and you talk very well, and it makes it a lot easier for us to interpret. So that was superb. When you mentioned a couple of things about EHCPs, you mentioned enforcement of EHCPs, and you mentioned accountability from EHCPs. And I think those are both things that have been completely missing over the last, well, from your perspective, 15 years, from my perspective, 7 years. And I just really welcome you bringing that that to this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lodge. I mean, I think, just finishing off on this paper, I think, again, I'll reiterate my thanks, but I think just to give you reassurance, I think I was just hard listening. It also sings really to me of a lot of the aspirations for the council and officers, and it definitely ties in with Strand 4, and where we talk about our corporate plan, is that the right word? Which talks about building inclusive communities and support, and that is something that is going to come forward, and it is because of people like you that bring this forward that we're doing that. And I know it's a passion of Julian and Denise's to drive that forward, and Jack, that it comes across full on. So I think, I'd love to think that you're going to be sat there in 2 years' time and say, actually, you have done a lot better and it's improving. And the sad reality is that, yes, there are still children out there at this particular moment. So we sit there that sat in school not having the greatest time, or as you say, sat at home not having the greatest time, and that probably is even worse. And for a lot of children, it will be really working. Is it 70,000-80,000 children that we've got in our schools? So for some it will be working, for a lot it's not. So we will keep driving. That's the job of this committee, is to hold decision makers to account, and senior officers ask those probing questions and make sure that we are improving. I think it would be useful that cabinet, if I guess my only recommendation is that this report is officially, despite we've got 3 cabinet members here, this is shared with the cabinet, because it is a whole council thing. So we'll share the report with the cabinet on official lines. And oh, hang on, I'm getting told. So yeah, do you want to read that out? Save me doing it. So.
But
Yeah.
I think just taking from what Chair
I'll
has
bring
just
Jack
said
in, yeah.
About the committee, obviously thanking Kelly and the other parents and professionals for your time in that session, and that the committee continues to include the voice of children, young people and families in its scrutiny of the implementation of the SEND transformation programme moving forwards. Chair.
Jack, I'll bring you in. Thank you.
Firstly, can I just repeat, Kelly, thank you. And the service truly recognises your experience, and for yourself and of course for Joshua. And Chair, thank you as well for drawing attention. It is the passion of all of us as local authority officers to ensure that things improve. And if anything that this afternoon comes across as us not hearing you, I'd like to hear that directly, because everything that we're doing is about building better, so that the experiences that Joshua, yourself and many families have experienced improves. That's going to take time. It's very, very challenging, but we're truly hopeful that we've built the team. So thank you, and please pass that on to Joshua. The second thing, with regards to the report, in there's some quite key asks, requests, demands, and I want to reassure you that many of them have been picked up through a communication and relationship charter. Again, local authorities speak, but quite simply, in our SEND operations, in our operations team, we are starting with partners to ensure that our communication with families improves, our communication with partners, because quite simply, sometimes people haven't been listened to, and if they'd have been listened to earlier, things would have got better. So in the performance part, and Scrutiny definitely will hold us to account for this and be asking about this, we will be able to demonstrate that things are improving, but I'm very aware that that isn't felt by everybody yet. So thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I think, obviously I'll move that recommendation, Kelly, but I think the next part of our meeting will go into the scrutiny of what we're doing and where we're doing. So I would, obviously, if you've got to get back to Berrynold, fine. But if you're happy to stay and listen, that's equally fine. And hopefully you'll see us hear a little bit about what the service is doing and seeing us sort of question senior officers and cabinet members over them. But you do need to go, do you? Oh, but it is live stream, so you'll be able to watch it back and see how well you've done. You will. Okay, thank you again. Oh, sorry, the Chief Executive.
Hi, Kelly, thank you for being here today. Just absolutely accurate in what you've said. Totally agree with everything you've said. You know, personally, as a teacher to trade, I think there's something that needs to be picked up here. Our teachers should have the opportunity to have appropriate training and support. I haven't come across a teacher in Devon who doesn't want the best for young people, but they're working within a restricted system that needs significant reform. And as was mentioned earlier this morning, the support that should have gone in post-COVID to help the teaching profession to respond to the changes in our young people is not there. So I would ask that the committee consider that, because when you look at the statistics for our teaching profession and how many of them are unhappy in the profession, it goes back to what we said this morning. We need our social workers in a good place, feeling well, feeling valued, so they can do the best for young people in Devon. And I think we have a challenge there. And national reform, I think, is light on actually how are we going to help the teaching profession in the future. So I'm glad that you've actually recognised that. I think the other thing that you've set out is something that needs to be considered in Devon, as to what extent, with that lack of funding and lack of support in classrooms, that actually the consequence of that is an issue in terms of, for those managing the schools in Devon, how many school leaders, you know, have sat with us in our teams and had to talk about cutting support staff in Devon schools. And I think that is fundamentally linked to the F40 funding over time in Devon. So I think picking up that piece about support staff to help in the classrooms. I think the other thing you're very accurate about that needs an intensive look is there are a range of behaviour policies that many families speak to us about. And I do think that the Department for Education have a responsibility to look at some of those behaviour policies. Inspiring to hear you talk about how children flourish, learning styles, methodologies. So I think behaviour policies are something post-COVID in Devon that are interesting and perhaps need a look. So I just really want to pick up on what you've said, because it is so important that those bits are noticed. As for the HCPs, that's on us as a county council. Absolutely on us. Wasn't good enough, isn't good enough yet. What I want to assure you is that we are currently, I was in a meeting earlier this morning about timeliness, looking at the resource we need to put into that, but it's about timeliness and it's about quality. There are green shoots, it's not there yet, but what you've got our absolute commitment is to report to this committee on what you've pointed out has been a failing for us. So I just want to reassure you that that is on us, and just to thank you sincerely for, in the shortest, most concise version ever, outlined what our challenges are, but doing it in a way that actually gives us as a staff group here just that hope that we're beginning to work in partnership on this issue rather than previously in a blame culture. So genuinely on behalf of the staff here, thank you.
And you do have to shoot off, but thank you ever so much, Kelly. I think Max will make sure you find your way safely. And again, thank you for coming. Sorry. If you share that on the screen, and then much easier, isn't it? It is easier to see it on screen, members, and it's a little bit extra to what we said earlier, I think. So now matters for consideration or review. Item 7 now, isn't it? 6 before. So Devon Local Area SEND Transformation Programme Strand 4 update. And this is building inclusive learning communities. And I think Denise is going to introduce this, and with help from Jack, or Jack's going to introduce this. So Jack, you didn't just say Jack and Jill.
Jack and Jim.
Thank you, Chair. And this report and the resulting discussion and questions and scrutiny builds on the previous meeting where our colleagues came and presented to you on the experiences of families and how we were improving that within strands 1 and 2 of the transformation programme. Strand 4, building inclusive learning communities. We talked about this morning, but quite simply, this is about avoiding the issues that Kelly so eloquently put across to us, and it represents the experiences of so many children and families. Building inclusive learning communities is about bringing together the partnership effectively to meet children's needs in the community. And what we want to be able to do, and what we will be able to do, is demonstrate over time improved performance, ensuring that more children needs can be met in their communities, within schools, within settings, and wherever their education happens within their community. The partnership element is important to note. Myself and Sue Smart from the ICB are the senior reporting officers to the SEND Transformation Board. And that's a clear statement that this isn't just about DCC, but it is the partnership. What building inclusive learning communities will look like on the ground, again, we talked about a bit this morning. It's about ensuring that families, that schools, that communities can receive the support earlier in a coordinated way, that they are truly heard, and that we are able to create local solutions to ensure that children's outcomes improve. I'm here with my colleagues Jim Barnicott and Alice McShane, which are 2 of 3 of our locality leads, our strategic locality leads in Devon. In strand 3 of the transformation programme, we talk about redesigning our services. And again, I spoke about that a little bit this morning. What this means in effect, having Jim, Alice and Mark Walker in the north and mid, what that means is we are getting closer to schools and settings, developing those relationships, no matter what their governance system, to ensure that we all work together more effectively. How is that going at the moment? It's an improving picture. It's a difficult picture. But we are absolutely committed to overcoming some of the barriers that we've already explored. What I think will be helpful, and I'm willing to take guidance on this, is if I pass to Jim and he talks about some of the elements of the report and the delivery, and then I think what would be most helpful is to take questions on strand 4, building inclusive learning communities.
Off. Right, is that working? Okay, great. Thank you, Jack. I think that just building on what Jack just said, key to building inclusive learning communities is that sense of cooperation. And within that, we can really foster being really clear about the roles of us as a local authority and our partners, and really building those partnership programs, which allows us to innovate. So some of the things that I'd draw your attention to in particular around that innovation is the work we're doing in the south and west with Kevix, with the SEND Hub, and how we're then repeating that work within the Exmouth learning community with Exmouth Community College. And really what that is enabling us to do is build places for children and create places for children whose needs may have been a barrier to inclusion in mainstream schools. So we can really upskill those teachers, which we've heard obviously from Kelly earlier when she talked about her own experiences, and obviously Donna's mentioned that as well. So that's one of our key strategies really, is how we really build those partnerships, both with our maintained schools and with our academy trusts. And in terms of the challenging picture, in the KPI report, you will start to see green shoots. So we have had year-on-year improvement in our absence rate for children with SEN support. The number of children within EHCP who are children missing education has come down. Children who are NEET, which means not in education, employment and training, within EHCP has come down, and there's a couple of other indicators as well. But as Jack said, it's a complex picture, and as we've just heard, although those indicators are starting to shift, those are unlikely to be felt by our families yet. But it is this strand, and through building those inclusive learning communities where we start to listen to parents, where we build co-production between parents, ourselves and our schools, that we can really make a significant change in that data over the next 12 months and really move practice forward in the county so that more children are included in our schools, less children are in elective home education where it's not the right choice for them, less children are severely absent. So I think one of the strengths of this particular strand is that we do have a really clear set of key performance indicators, and we will be able to measure our progress. And as we look at each of these work streams that we have, that we will be able to pinpoint where we're having our success and how we can change practice and change our partnership work to target more specifically young people who need that help. So perhaps young people on the autism spectrum, or young people, we heard EBSA mentioned by Kelly, emotionally based school avoidance. You know, we'll get to know, we're really getting to know those children in those cohorts, what their needs are, responding to parents and hearing from parents. I think one of the criticisms of us in the past is parents not feeling we spoke to them or listened to them. And I think that's been a real shift as we've moved into our locality teams with inclusion partners, who are our first real response to schools and planning with schools. We do have a much greater sense of how we can resolve problems for young people and families, what services we can contact. And then, of course, we're bringing that all together through the transformation board. So I hope that's a reasonable summary, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Bell, did I see your hand? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. I mean, it is as ever fantastic and a very difficult piece of work. I mean, to address, obviously, everyone's mentioned that families don't feel that the change is happening, and yes, I know that change is happening, and we've got good evidence to say we are making change. But of course, whereas we say 2,000 children, if you're that one child or you're that one family, you don't feel that change is happening. That was just my statement. But if I could make a suggestion or a recommendation as much as a question, if that's okay. In a minute, we're going to look at our key performance indicators, and that's really important. The one looking at 3 point something, I've lost my page now, but where we talk about missed appointments, missed assessments, overdue assessments, I feel that would be a very valuable, important, and possibly a vital performance indicator, something that I think we should be reflecting on whenever this report comes out, to see, obviously, I want to see that we're improving, but of course, you know, to see if the opposite is true too. It'd be something that'd be useful to really think about and to have focus, because I know from my experience, not wanting to speak about my own experiences, but the people that I represent and the families that my children are at school with, the problem they have is that these meetings are, as says here, delayed, put back, staffing isn't available. There are a lot of reasons that they don't happen, but when you are that child or you're that family, and as Kelly mentioned earlier, you know, one childhood only, if it's another 2-month wait, that's 2 months of your childhood, and that could be a couple of % of your life spent so far. Thank you.
Councillor Bickley, they are.
Thank you. This is all a massive project. We've come into this partway through. It was already started. Realigning all the services, I believe, has taken amount of work. That's why we're saying green shoots to be felt now. Having worked for 10 years in a school, I know that the reputation of Devon County Council, I'm afraid, wasn't worth very much. And the fact that you have a social worker not coming to an appointment, to coming to a TAF meeting, or, you know, crossing in the corridor with somebody else going to another meeting, not knowing each other. They both need to see the same child. I think those days are just coming to an end. That's it. No more of that. This is a teamwork now. This is Devon's team again around the child. So you would have your inclusion worker with a social worker talking to health, making sure those neurodiversity assessments are done on time, hopefully filling in the HCP paperwork together, getting a cohesive team around that child. And it just hasn't been done that way before. And that has taken a massive amount of organisation. So I do believe that we are coming to the point now where it will be felt, but it's taken a while to get there. But, you know, it's a massive thing to turn around.
Oh, I think so. And of course, the confidence needs to be built up, and the confidence can only be built up when those meetings happen and when the parents at the school gate say, I got this service, this is better, because then they will share that and they will share and build up the confidence. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I just, you know, obviously, thank you to Councillor Bickley. Save me getting another slap from Max. You know, it's good to hear about that multi-agency coordination and certainly across, you know, our children's services, if you like. I guess the question is, are there still any gaps with partners, and you know, are there any that we should be bringing to this committee to understand where their issues are? I'll put it that way.
I think the simple answer, Chair, is that yes, of course there are gaps. We are developing this new approach. So from a Devon County Council, Councillor Bickley has described eloquently that we have had to redesign the whole service, quite simply, to ensure that it's one, fit for purpose, and two, will meet the upcoming challenges, including the reforms that we so desperately need in our system. And again, references what Donna shared as Chief Exec is absolutely a necessity. We need system change as well. Going back to the specific question around gaps in the partnership, there's nothing different that we can say as Inclusion and Learning Service that our Chief Executive hasn't said. Quite simply, every part of the partnership has to step up and change. My desire, I think it's shared by the service. I think it's shared by the council. It's definitely shared by the elected members, is that we do that together. And so just to be specific about some partners, there is no doubt at all that we, as part of the system that is difficult, complex, etc., words that mean nothing to parents because they feel it every day. We've got schools, academies, settings, etc. So just as one example in the partnership, and this morning, Councillor Bickley referenced that there is change within, for example, our academy partners, not all of our partners, not in the same way, but that partnership that Jim referenced before around the send hubs and the outreach that goes to those local schools. We tried and learnt around Kevick. And now that is happening in Exmouth, in that area, and will be repeated in the north with partners there. That partnership has been led. That partnership has been led by multi-academy trusts. We are there. We're a full partner. We're part of it, but it's a new relationship. And this morning we talked about auto-enrollment free school meals. That was a council-led project, and it's achieved huge success. It was done with our multi-academy partners. Donna is quite right, absolutely spot on. We have got some elements that need to change because some things drive others. So for example, where behaviour policies are driving children out, and then we get into the transport challenges, etc., that we discussed this morning, these things need to be addressed as system-wide. So that's one element of partnership. I referenced that Sue and myself, Sue Smart from the ICB and myself are the senior reporting officers in this space. And we both know that we have to work hard to ensure that health partners and DCC and other partners work together in this building inclusive learning communities space. It's a really important part. I hope that answers your question, Chair, and I can see that Sue has put her hand up as well.
Sue's popped up, which is great. So thank you, Sue. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to contribute to what Jack had said there and really reinforce that message about how we're working in partnership. So both the responsibility that Jack and I have taken for Strand 4, but also the responsibility that Kelly Knott and I have taken for co-chairing the transformation board for SEND. And I think that's helping to drive a kind of real improvement, a real kind of pace on the improvement within the SEND transformation. So just wanted to provide that assurance from an ICB and a health system perspective. And of course, we work very closely with our health providers to bring them along on that journey with us as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor, I think if you're happy to take, I'm not sure if the questions are for you, Sue, or Steve, but Councillor Lodge, not you, Sue.
So my question, Chair, is slightly different actually, but are we okay to take that now?
Yeah, can I just go to Councillor Carson then, because I think it does relate to this subject.
It does, thank you, Chair. Jack, you mentioned that in the engagement that there were difficulties and there were barriers. I just wondered whether Jim and Alice would like to expand on that, so the committee understands what the issues are for you.
I think one of the key issues is working is always finding agreement across multi-partners. So it's stating clearly the case for change, finding that agreement around change and that way forward, because there are bound to be different opinions, different pressures in different communities, and finding that agreement is key. I think, Councillor, one of the key changes we've made is we've strengthened our relationship with Devon Schools Leadership Services, DSLS. So we now have locality hub briefings each term. So in the North and Mid, that happened today, and South and West and Exeter and East are both happening next week. So that gives us the opportunity to meet with our school and trust leaders within our learning communities, where we can scrutinise the data across Exeter and East, or South and West, or North and Mid, look at what those pressures are, particularly around part-time timetables, suspensions, permanent exclusions, children leaving for elective home education, and come up with a plan which addresses those concerns within the locality. And that's the work we're starting next month. And I think that's one of the key ways that we will turn the green shoots into real progress.
Supplementary, Steve. So are you finding the engagement with the different academies at different levels, or are they similar?
Councillor Carson, the truth is it is at different levels, as I referenced before, and we're dealing with a lot of history here, and relationships are often based on history, and trust definitely is varied. Trust with trusts and trust in the county council is varied. Because of that, that's exactly why we've worked to bring in a strategic independent advisor around inclusion, and quite simply that is to cut through the history and get on with together how are we going to improve inclusion in the communities. Engagement in that process is far stronger. It's fair to say that the prestige in both the independent advisor, Mark Vickers, and the Olive Academies, i.e. his reputation and the work that he's involved in nationally, has ensured that this has moved beyond a Devon County Council wish and moved into let's do the right thing now, as well as that within the SEND Transformation Board, the appointment of Dr. Andre Image as the independent chair. Already Mark Vickers and Andre are working together to how do we align the SEND transformation with the inclusive learning communities, the inclusion agenda, to ensure that we're not here in 12 months still talking about the history. What we're talking about is, okay, we've done this much in 12 months. This morning I spoke about accelerating that performance, that progress, so that quite quickly families can feel this, see this, and get behind improving Devon's education system. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Carson.
Yes, thank you. Just one very quick one, Chair.
Yeah, very quick, but I don't know if Alice wants to. Did you want to go?
Yeah, just one very quick one. Is some of the kickback financial pressure?
Yes,
from the academies.
It's partly that. It's partly the drivers for performance within the school setting. So our current legislation encourages academic performance and SEND, and it is likely that there is going to be some challenge to that within the upcoming legislation. How far that goes, we don't know, but there has to be a change in the drivers, to go back to Kelly's point actually around, you know, what are schools for? What are they for in our communities? And so as a local authority, or as local authority officers, our role is to influence, collaborate, and fulfill our statutory functions. That's the same. We have to encourage our other responsible bodies, including academy trusts, including the Department for Education, to play their role in improving things. Again, I hope that answers.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. Let's hope that this is a great initiative. Roll it out all the way through Devon.
Sorry, Councillor Carson. Councillor, thank you. Alice, did you want to come back?
Only briefly, thank you. Just to add to Jack's comments and Jim's, I think culturally within the local authority, we're really starting to feel some movement in terms of those relationships. And I think some of those, particularly some of those academy trusts, particularly where perhaps some of their inclusive practice is not what we would want to see, that is, you know, going to be a little bit more difficult to shift. I think in terms of barriers, I think one of the things that we need to keep our eye to is something that at the moment is somewhat out of our control, will be the Ofsted framework as it starts to emerge. So we've already seen a number of inspections coming through. What we had really hoped and still hope is that all the messages we're expecting to see in the schools bill really chime with the way in which those Ofsted inspections are being carried out. And at the moment, I think that's, the jury is still out there, because ultimately, when you talk about drivers, if an academy trust or any other school is operating with what we would see as not very inclusive practice, but is able to get you know, an at least expected standard at Ofsted, that makes our job far more difficult. So that hearts and minds element in terms of doing things for the right reasons, in terms of the moral drivers, it's harder.
Can I just reiterate, can we keep the questions and the answers, as obviously we want the answers and we want the questions, but if we can try and compress them a bit, it would be helpful for time. So Councillor Lodge, then Councillor Hookway.
Thanks, Chair. Jack's just referred to statutory duties. When we're talking about partnerships and communities, there's been a history within the council of driving families to tribunals, or tribunals have been a last resort. I'm just wondering where tribunals fit in this process of partnership and communities, and is there a changing attitude within the council towards tribunals?
Thank you, Councillor Hodge. Tribunals are another symptom of a system that isn't working for families. And so it is absolutely our view that we want to avoid families being in that situation, and we want to avoid the local authority being in that situation. It is part of the legal process as things stand. This strand, building inclusive learning communities, is a preventative strand in a really simplistic way. Tribunals are a part of the system at the moment. The conversations around where a child's needs can be met, should be met, are often very, very complex, very, very difficult. I think I want to give a signal of hope, but I have to be realistic within that. Councillor Hodge, and the signal of hope is the more work we do earlier, the less likely it is that tribunals will be necessary. That's the signal of hope. The reality is, while we're working in this system, tribunals are part of that legal recompense, if you, for again, want a better term, and we can't avoid that at the moment. So there's no specific policy.
Jack,
around...
can I just jump in? Sorry. Yeah, I was a bit slow at the start. Funny enough, Councillor Lodge, I asked for a briefing personally as the chair of this committee on exactly this point, and pretty much what Jack's saying was said to me, and I think Maria will probably come in a second, but because I was considering it, whether we ought to be putting it on the work programme or not. And I think, there are, I think what we've basically said, we have a report back in 6 months to see if what we're doing in this strand 4 is having a positive impact on our tribunals, and then we'll reinvestigate. But
thank you, Chair. So yes, we did have a really detailed meeting just around exactly where we are with tribunals at the moment. So my legal team do pick up the legal side of the work. And it's fair to say that we've had quite a big backlog on tribunals for quite some time. We have put a huge amount of work in, working very, very closely with Kelly on how we actually get that backlog down in the tribunal system. The court system doesn't particularly help. It's part of what I would say on the process, but we are trying very, very hard and starting to see some of the benefits of that now from that early help. And actually, how do we work with parents differently? How do we work with schools differently to avoid the tribunal process? We're never going to completely avoid that process. And legislation here is quite difficult on how it's stacked. But we are working really, really hard with the service and with parents on how we avoid going to tribunal in the first place, how we have early mediation meetings with parents about actually what provision is available and how can we look at the offer differently. We are planning to bring something back in around 6 months because we're just starting to see the improvements in this area. It's fair to say for a long, long time we have had a big backlog, but that's starting to slowly decrease.
Just going to bring Christina in because I think it's on this subject, isn't it? No, you'll have to wait your turn then, Christina. Like I say, I think, if you're happy with that, Councillor Lodge, I think, given the changes in the service, and what we're trying to achieve, I think it would be better value for us as a committee to look at it once it's a bit more embedded and see the difference, hopefully, that it's making. Councillor Bick.
Just to make one point, because your question is there a shift? And I think there is a shift. And I think that shift being, let's get it back earlier, let's work with families. And we don't want to have that adversarial approach, which has been pushed by government policy. That's the way it's set up. It is local authorities against parents. That's what we've seen time and time again. And that ends up in court. And the child's outcome should be at the heart of everything that's done. And so I do think there is a shift. Absolutely.
It was a really good question because, like I say, I'd raised it, and yeah, let's see where we are in 6 months. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, and I think I'd just like to say that it's not just the legal action; it's the fact that the stress and the strain that it puts families under is the key thing here. Because if families are struggling or parents are struggling to cope with the process, what's happening to their children at that time?
So if you felt in your situation, I know that we're talking about it as a strategic thing, but in your situation, if you had an inclusion partner working with you and working with the school, mediating really in effect from the word go, with small plans to make small adjustments within school, you can see how that in the future that would feel very different to how it feels now, I think. So I think we're going in the right direction.
Yeah. So Wilson. I don't want a long debate on this because
I think it's okay. Just quickly on tribunals, I'm just wondering what part of the transformation programme keeps an eye on this, and how can we be assured or keep tabs on it as a committee as well, to how we're addressing that backlog and these issues. Thank you.
Strand 2 of the transformation plan is the experience of families, children, families, and I referenced earlier with regards to Kelly's fabulous and valuable input around the communication and relationship charter, which is built on the 4 cornerstones approach that we're adopting in how we communicate. And we are and will be conducting audits where we will be able to give you performance reports on how we've improved. That includes the timeliness of how we respond, how we respond to families. Of course, that timeliness leads to intervening earlier, because the earlier that we listen, the better able we are to meet needs earlier. So that's where we can bring that report to you as a scrutiny committee, and we can, therefore you can scrutinise it.
Thank you, and we will do that and at the appropriate time, around about 6 months' time. I think it sort of reminds me of, what I see in my inbox. I think we've been too keen to be crowd pleasers and sort of over-promised and under-delivered. And I think, we need to be a lot fairer with parents. And, if we're going to miss a target, let's tell them as early as possible that we're going to miss a target. And they won't like it, but they'll accept it rather than being ignored. And target day comes around and they're running around chasing everybody in sundry, trying to get an answer to why they've not heard. So I think that would be my comment, what I'm hearing on the ground. I'm going to go to my.
I think it's important to say that the diagnostics and the gaps internally, rather than just a system piece, as I said earlier, we're not there yet. And that, earlier meeting today, looking at timeliness, we need to, similar to fostering, look at that end-to-end process across the whole council, because it's finance, it's legal, it's education, it's working with families. And so there needs to be that connectivity between scrutiny and that performance board and how that comes together. But I think it's important to say that we have to get to a more predictive element of what milestones we can reach and when. And we're not at that level of diagnostic yet to give accurate timelines of improvement. What we see in children's social care is a completely different space, because we've been at it longer and more intensively. And also, you heard this morning, we've got that staff capacity to deliver on mitigations and actions. We do not have that in SEND and inclusion at this moment in time. And so we are, or whether in legal services. So we have to continue to work at that. What we had was a very broken internal system that was not functioning. We are now in that stage of rebuilding that, and I think we need to set that out within a 3-year plan so that we're not over-promising and under-delivering, but also we're regularly on the challenge at the moment. How do you do transformation and business as usual at the same time? And that's really, we haven't got that resourced correctly yet. And it's not just a bit about, back to I said earlier this morning, about the quality of staff or the capability or our staff in the right place doing the right things or the connectivity. So I'm hoping that with a enhanced diagnostic within the next few months, we will be able to share that with really accurate timelines. But that transformation programme is still, I would say, in its early stages, but we have got to ask ourselves the question, how do we accelerate that pace that addresses legacy and does the business as expected now? And we definitely will have to put enhanced capability and capacity and pace into that if to meet, I would imagine, the expectations that are being set for us in a strategic plan.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hookway, then Christina.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I want to ask a question about governance, really. Going back to what Jack was saying earlier on about the Mountain Academy trusts and the work that's going on, the partnership that's going on. My question really is, within the partnerships, who's the senior partner? Is it us or is it the academies?
It's a very good question, and the answer is there isn't a senior partner. Part of the work that I referenced before around the strategic independent advisor, part of that work stream is to recommend a governance system for Devon that looks specifically at the performance, as Donna is referencing, and that acceleration, building on the work of the SEND strategic board, but including the whole spectrum of inclusion and including all partners in that. That's in the work stream for the strategic advisor to recommend to us, and it's something that I think professionally, I think it's something that we need. I don't know whether we need a senior partner, but we definitely need to be looking at improved governance across the partnership, because your question actually highlights how fragmented the system is in England, not in Devon, in England, epitomised by the system in Devon. Who holds who to account? The reality is the partnership needs to hold each other to account to improve outcomes for children and young people.
Can I just remind us, great question, but let's keep it, we are on this paper in strand 4. Okay, so I don't want us to, we need these to remain trustful of us, that we'll stick to the, we are looking at the paper before us today, and strand 2, 3, 5 will come.
Thank you. So it was picking up, Alice, you mentioned the Ofsted framework, and inclusion is in that framework, and there's a lot of work being done on inclusion. And so, yes, it's notified that it's noted that when inclusion needs attention that in schools, that's really important. However, my question is, with all the work done in inclusion, what is the quality of education? Because also we've been monitoring the Ofsted reports, and inclusion can be strong in schools, which is lovely. However, the quality of education isn't and needs attention. So my question is, if you've got children that schools that are very inclusive, but the quality of education needs attention, what is the local authority doing about the quality of education in our schools? And what are you doing to monitor it so that the inclusiveness of these schools has got a good quality of education? And how are you supporting schools that need rapid improvement?
Yeah, I'll come in if they want to answer that question first, because mine's slightly different from that.
I thought you were going to answer the question.
No, I'm not, because I actually see, I have to say that my emphasis is different than from that. I have to say that my concentration and focus is on the most vulnerable children, and whereas education obviously is absolutely crucially important for all our children, what concerns me, and when you look at this thing here, when you look at this chart here, there are just far too many red.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting my turn, but that's where I'm going to be.
And the truth is, and I'll say it, I know officers won't because they're far too polite, but we have got academy trusts that are playing the game here. They are deliberately excluding pupils in order to boost their academic achievements and their scores within Ofsted, and that is unacceptable. So I think that as a scrutiny committee, and certainly as a council, we need to highlight that. What we need to do is to drill down on the exclusion and the inclusion and the part-time education, the elective home education, and the fact that children in learning communities are not being taught in their learning communities because they've been excluded by schools just purely for their own selfish interests. That's unacceptable, and I think that we need to highlight that, shine a light on it. So this is across the whole of Devon. I'd like to see it drilled down into regions, possibly learning communities, and possibly even schools, and then I'd like to see a league table. So those ones that are worse performing in respect of exclusion, permanent exclusions, lack of inclusion, elective home education, all of that, and then we can pull them in and say, why are you doing so badly? And they may have a perfectly reasonable excuse as to why they're doing that. But then on the other hand, if they say, well, look, we've got a great Ofsted report, so I'm not interested in your Ofsted report. What I'm interested in is that you're an inclusive learning community and that every single child in your community has the opportunity to be taught in that community and that you have a responsibility to deliver that. I know that Devon isn't perfect, but I feel that we have been taken for a ride by some of these multi-academy trusts, and it's time that we push back.
Well, I think you, like you say, I was waiting. It's got the same piece of paper out ready to ask some questions. Well, thank you for putting it that way. I wouldn't have quite gone that way. I'd have gone all the way around the houses. But I think the reality is what we're going to propose later is we as a committee need to go and visit one of these schools that are doing really well. Because once we've seen what really good feels like and looks like, that will enable us then to go into other schools and understand that, you know, what that feels like and looks like.
And can I say, I think you should visit a school where they're doing really badly at it as well.
Absolutely, but I think until you know what good feels like and looks like, it's difficult to then walk into another school and say, you know, but, you know, like you say, absolutely that challenge. So, Donna.
And respond to the question about the, you know, attainment, achievement, inclusion, you know, all important in a young person's life. We do have schools, and following on from just that comment, that are fantastic at inclusion, and they're doing fantastic work to close the attainment gap, so that, you know, that whole equity intervention, just as we talk about in social care, there's some astonishing changes in attainment, along with improved inclusion in some of our schools in Devon. So I think equally so we should bring that to this table, but because there's lots of people that absolutely agree on all things happening together, and I've certainly saw some schools who have really taken this on in the last couple of years and are doing fantastic work. So I think it's important to say today we have astonishingly brilliant practice in some of our schools in Devon, and I think it's important to highlight that, along with, as Councillor Brazil has said, areas where we really need to change things. But there are some schools that absolutely are focusing on all things, regardless of Ofsted frameworks, regardless of national policies, because actually it's what they want for the young people in their communities. And I think the more we highlight that, we can maybe get people more on board with that and not be reliant upon an inspection visit or a framework, but out of the kind of core values approach.
Can I, Christine, are you happy that's an answer? You come back. I'm going to call after Christina's done her line, because I am running overtime and I'm conscious that.
No, because I think it's about the monitoring of the quality of education and not waiting for an Ofsted report. I agree with you, and I agree with everything that's been said. Yeah, absolutely agree. But actually, you know, when some schools fail and some have, how are you monitoring that and to stop that happening? Because you've got an inclusive community, but actually, are you failing the children within that community when a school goes into special measures, or or it needs attention? So how are you monitoring that to stop that? I know the report, an Ofsted report is one thing, but are you keeping an eye on your schools and the quality of education to prevent that happening, so you're not failing? And there is good practice, and there's not such good practice in inclusion. I accept that, but still, that, you know, there's a lot of monitoring about inclusion, but about the quality of education that the children get when they are in schools is hugely important.
Thank you. And I think we need a really quick answer on this.
Yeah, the short
How
answer,
are we
yeah.
monitoring it? And yeah.
Short answer is yes. We have a direct responsibility to our maintained schools to monitor the quality of education. For our academy schools, we seek assurance where we are concerned about performance, that they have adequate and suitable plans in place, and that's part of our structured programme of ongoing monitoring through our localities.
Thank you, everybody. That was a good little session. Probably created more questions than answers, and we will be revisiting that. And obviously, the improvement board is doing their work, and you know, there are some good stuff going on. I'm going to look at Lou's notes a minute. Oh, okay, so I think we're just noting that report. Is that right? I mean, I think the specific action probably is that we do want to formally put on notice or on record better. Notice sounds a bit, that we would like to keep a check on the tribunals and that going forward. So we'll look to bring that back in 6 months' time and understand that where the improvements there. So. Yeah, no, definitely the data in by locality would be useful, and I do like, if possible, by school. To be honest, I think it would be useful, and you know, and I think again, members, we will try and arrange this visit to a school, but it's really useful for you to get into schools yourself, your local schools, build a sort of relationship with them, and it'd be useful probably for members to have some sort of crib sheet of those sort of questions that they should be asking, and so that we're not just being fed all the glossy stuff or even the negative stuff. You know, what should we be asking when we visit our local schools?
That is available on the members SharePoint site, but we can absolutely circulate that. So I think so our colleagues in Inclusion and Learning, as part of the member induction programme, did a masterclass on inclusive education, and as part of that, some sort of starter for 10 questions on ordinarily available inclusive education was provided to members, but we can recirculate that to all members after this meeting, if that's helpful, Chair. And
very helpful, and I'm all for SharePoint, but it's a huge thing, and so it'll save us all having to spend hours this evening finding it. Thank you, Jack.
Chair, just to pick up the data, we can provide members with a summary of the KPIs for their, i.e. the data for their local learning communities as agreed in the masterclass around CME and EHE. So my suggestion for you to consider is that we provide you maybe with three items of data. We talked, Councillor Brazil said part-time timetables, persistent absence, exclusions. If you have that data, it gives you an indication of how to use the crib sheet to ensure that the schools in your community have the support and the challenge that they need.
Absolutely, I don't of course take you in there on picking all our good work to build that relationship. But I think, you know, I think it goes across all offices. I think, Julian, like I say, we visited North Devon yesterday, and I know Donna's been up there. The fact that senior leaders or councillors are interested in the work they're doing, you know, that's a start, because they've not seen that before in times, you know, and they actually really do value the fact that somebody's interested in the work they do, what their challenges are, what their successes have been. So really important. Yeah, so I'll formally move. We've got these two. So I've already done the tribunals. Committee formally receives an update on tribunals in 6 months, that the committee receive a report and data by locality on progress against part-time table, consistent absence and exclusions to support and challenge communities. Does that need to say around, particularly around those with SEND and EHCPs? Yeah. Thank you. You happy with that, members? I'll move it. I need a second. I'd like Councillor Lodge. Thank you. Take the vote. Brilliant. Thank you. Again, thank you to the officers for all your hard work. And I realise there are teams below you as well. And please pass on our thanks as well, and for all the hard work that is going on. And we wish you all well, and really hope that those green shoots turn into bigger shoots and flowers. So thank you. And now we move on to, I've forgotten the item 9, I think it is, but it might be 10. And it's around Children's Social Care Performance Transformation Programme. So I don't know if this is going to be Becky or Richard that are going to introduce, but whoever would like to go first. Becky.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. This is the second time that we've reported on the transformation programmes in children's social care. I think we reported last back in September, and we report
most scrutiny panels in relation to our performance report. So the report is in 3 parts. It does start with our monthly key performance indicator report that runs with the performance information up to the end of November. In the covering report, I have just highlighted a number of strengths and areas of consistent practice, and then some areas for focus. I don't intend to go through that because I think everybody will have had the opportunity to read that, and I'm sure there'll be some questions, but I did just want to highlight some changes specifically in relation to KPI 5, which is child protection conferences held within the 15-day timescale that we're required to. That has gone after a dip in November. I can report that that is now back up to 92%. It is it's a daily, weekly focus for us to make sure that those meetings are held within timeframes. And then also just jumping back to KPI 3, re-referrals have now gone back down to 20% in December. So back to where we'd, more where we'd expect them to be. And I guess just to highlight that increase in re-referral numbers during October and November was due to a practice change that we made and a process change that we made in recognition of the fact that our practice wasn't quite where we needed it to be. In terms of decision making in some of the area teams. So I'm really pleased to be able to see that has now come back down. Obviously the reporting is on a monthly basis, so there are fluctuations, but that is moving back in the right direction. Thank you. The other part, the second part to our report is around the Families First transformation programme. I do apologise to those of you that were at Scrutiny this morning because I'm about to repeat myself just a little bit, but I think it probably is important. And then I'll hand over to Daniel just to give you an update on the Growing Futures programme as well. So in terms of the Family First reforms transformation, they very much fit within our Families First plan, as you'll have seen at this board previously. It is our, one of our sort of key ambitions is around supporting children to remain within their families, within their local schools, within their communities, and the things that we're talking about very much fit with what our inclusion and learning colleagues have already been talking about today. And our focus in children's social care is very much on a left shift, so really moving towards that early intervention, prevention work with children and families. If we can front load the support that we can offer at an earlier point in time, the idea being that we prevent their needs from escalating. So as part of the Families First programme work, it has been ongoing. We do now have a programme board established that has key partners around the table. So education, health and police colleagues are all key members of that board and are working with us to deliver the strands of that programme together. And we have included parents with experience. So we start every board with a story from a parent, which really sets the scene for some of the issues and some of the challenges that we're trying to tackle. And we have a plan to set up a children's board within that as well, so that we can really hear the voices of our children and families in the work that we're taking forwards. And that's been really successful so far. Just focusing quickly on some of the key strands of work, starting at the front of the system, it is around strengthening our front door, so really strengthening our decision making and practice, developing an integrated front door with our partners and moving towards a 24/7 response. We have that already in children's to an extent because we have an out of hours service, but really sort of extending those those opening hours into earlier in the day and later in the evening, so that we're dealing with things in real time rather than anybody having to wait unless it's a crisis. We have plans to further expand our targeted early help, not by too much, but just by a little bit more, so that we can really get those waiting lists down to zero. We are seeing, and you'll see from the KPI report, that we're seeing that level of need at targeted early help plateauing now, which is what we anticipated when we planned for the service in terms of its current form around capacity. And we're looking at bringing together our social work teams and that targeted early help service much more closely together, so that we can reduce the transition points for children and families, and they're not having to work with lots of different people. Another key part is our family safeguarding approach, and that is the idea, if we can meet parents' needs, we can meet the needs of our children and families. So bringing in, we already have domestic abuse workers located in the front door and located in our 3 localities. Moving forward into 2026, 27, we have a plan to bring in substance misuse workers And we are hoping that we will be able to find a way to bring in adult mental health workers. So that is what we call the toxic trio in children's social work. They are the three sort of key needs for parents that we need to work with them to be able to address. And then finally, the other key strand is around family-led decision making, which is around the growth of our family groups conferencing service, already a strength for us, and the growth of our lifelong links service that has been made a permanent service in the budget this year, which is really exciting news for us. And we've got an ambition that no child will come into our care without being offered a family group conference. So without us making absolutely sure that we have explored all of those opportunities within their families for them before they come into our care, and that no child will leave our care without either a family group conference or without links being made through the lifelong links service with two trusted adults, so that they have got someone in their life who will be able to support them ongoing. So it's all work in progress, as we talked about this morning. All of these things are in our budget going forward, so it's an exciting time for the service. So we're in the process of recruiting to some of that additional capacity that I've talked about to enable us to deliver on some of those areas of practice. And then handing smoothly over to Daniel just for a quick update on Growing Futures.
Growing Futures. Our Growing Futures board tracks improvement across children's commissioning and how we're trying to find the right homes for our children across all the strands of Growing Futures. There's three key elements we're trying to ensure informs all of our improvement. One is ensuring we're data led and we've got really good understanding of the needs of our children and how we're tracking progress. The second is ensuring young people's voices are critical throughout the whole process, so they are on the board, they inform decision making, and their views also inform the different strands of Growing Futures in a whole variety of ways. And thirdly, ensuring the wider local authority comes together across all the areas of improvement. So it's not just around children's services, but finance, procurement colleagues, HR, and our data teams all come together within that board to ensure that we're utilising all of our expertise and resources to improve the outcomes for young people. In terms of the Growing Futures focus work and where we are currently, we've got a piece of work looking at how our internal homes are performing and ensuring that we're meeting the needs of our young people. We've expanded the number of internal homes to reduce the number of children in unregistered provision. That has been done at pace, and we've got a number of new homes open now, and we want to ensure they fully meet the needs of our children, so ensuring they operate as well as they can and continue to improve. There's a strand focused on fostering. Since Growing Futures has started, we've seen an increase in the number of foster carers coming to assessment. So for the last two previous financial years, we've seen between 10 and 12 foster carers going to panel to become foster carers. This year, we're hoping to see over 20 carers coming to panel. Some might just miss the might stray into the next financial year, but that we're ahead of, significantly ahead of where we were last year, and we're working hard to build on that, and as well as improving our recruitment and assessment journey, which is a work in progress, and there's still a significant focus in that area. We also want to look at how we better support our carers. We've improved staff stability across our fostering and kinship teams, and that is having an impact, but there's more we need to do to utilise the expertise of foster carers to develop our service, and that's a key part of the 2026-2027 work. In terms of Growing Futures, the other key strands are around improving our commissioning practice and making sure we're working with all our different providers who provide residential homes and independent fostering agency provision, and really drilling down to how they're meeting the needs of our children, and we're tracking that robustly, and also how we jointly commission and jointly work with health to make sure we're working as effectively as possible. The other key strands are around our post-16 provisions, our supported accommodation. We've got our Gaps Home programme, which reports into Growing Futures, and we're also going through the recommissioning of our 16+ provision. And probably the most significant piece of work is our our strategy to find a strategic partner to open 10 to 12 homes, a higher needs foster service and therapeutic education provision for that cohort of children where we currently send those children with the most complex of needs, where we often end up using unregistered provision and or needing to find provision out of Devon because we can't find any local provision to meet the needs of those children. So 30 to 40 children who need a really supportive home environment in a registered home where we can provide really good relational stability in a deinstitutionalized environment where it feels like a home, where it is a home for that young person, where we can build relationships with really experienced, well supported and trained high needs foster carers, and we can support them with a blended approach to care, where they might spend some time in that residential home, some time in fostering as they move towards moving into a more conventional family environment. And we might also, wherever possible, we can support them back into their family or kinship arrangements. And we're at the point now where we've had 2 months of dialogue with a number of different organisations who've started with us on that procurement journey and put in initial expressions of interest and applications to work with us. We've now have completed the final specification, ready for them to complete their final submissions, with the aim to award that contract in early spring, with our first homes opening at the tail end of this year.
Thank you, Daniel and Becky, and who else spoke on that? Somebody else spoke on that, but very useful. I'm going to have a quick go myself first, and I've got then Councillor Julian, Councillor Bell, I think, then Councillor Richardson I saw. I'm going to speed through mine really quickly. So the toxic trio that we heard about, obviously I talked about the Bridges team earlier. So is this about strengthening what the Bridges team does? And because obviously that's a fantastic success story when we sort of heard how many children they're prevented coming into care.
So the Bridges team is a success story in terms of the service and the intervention it offers. It is only for a relatively small number of children who are on the edge of care. So this is about strengthening our response across the whole of the system. So these adult practitioners will be located within our frontline social work teams. So the idea being that they will be able to respond directly to families alongside social workers. So it takes out the need, for example, for a referral process that can take quite a long time to progress. Sometimes with families, the best time to be able to engage and respond to them is during a crisis. So actually, if we're able to arrive at a home alongside a domestic abuse worker or alongside a substance misuse worker, the chances of that family engaging at that point, it's more likely.
Great, thank you, thank you. Children's homes. So the children's homes, as I read it this morning, we're aiming for 12. We had 12 places, and then the high end need, we're looking for 10 to 12 homes. Obviously, this is an interesting one that certainly me and Councillor Lodge have spoken about quite a bit. We as a council have got targets to meet to as a what's the word for it, asset. We're going to sell off some of those assets that are not needed. Yesterday, we looking at next week's agenda, for instance, there was a place in the centre of Bideford and there was a place fairly close to the centre of Exeter. And the question we asked was, have you spoken to Children's Services? And are we sure that they're not places that would be of use to the council? And is there cross department? Because obviously it's all very well saying we want to meet this target, because the other side with these people is they don't necessarily want to be, these two sites were pretty, I would have thought, perfect locations that kept them in the middle of the community and without the pressure of transport and having to, and they might bring us in a big payday, if you like, for the want of a better word, but ultimately they also, so is there any conversations between the two?
So we do liaise very closely with the property team in terms of both planning what homes we might need to purchase, but also assets we already have. I can take away the action to just make sure that anything going to that disposal.
Well, look at next
process
week's land and property committee.
we don't
Anything
miss
on there
anything.
you want.
Yeah. And we have a very clear vision, and we've shared that specification in terms of those homes which are in our communities with a really clear idea of what they would look like to accommodate and support 2 to 3 children in something which would probably be a 4 or 5 bedded home, so that it provides space for our staff who would live with those children. But I will chase that to just double check we've not missed.
And it might be that there's an opportunity for a joint venture of some sort. So, you know, there might be some open market alongside, you know. So I just think we're really keen that, you know, we don't, you know, trying to find land or property within the middle of a town centre can be tricky at times. So just look to me. Okay, thank you. And sorry, members, I wanted to get that in. I might be on the wrong track here, but obviously when we went to the children's conference back in November now, really good conference and very useful for me, but there's a lot made of storytelling and the child's journey and documenting that and ensuring that when the child does leave our care, they've got a really good record of why they came into care, what happened to them at a young age, what, you know, now that went through, and real inspirational young lady. You know, she's been a tremendous success story, and I think it's a message to all us members really, and everybody, that every child is only one good person away from being a success story. And you know, it was just somebody in our community that took interest in her that enabled her to flourish. And you know, not saying that we have to pay for her to get through university or any of ours, but that's what happened to this young person. Somebody in the community just backed her, and you know, no, she's got a hell of a job. So, you know, I don't think we ever, very rarely get contacted by children in care. Unfortunately, we've got the child's voice in all the sessions, but yeah. So I'm just interested in the storytelling really, and whether we are still on track with that, and it's quite clear to me how important it is to these young people.
So life story work for children is absolutely a focus and a priority for us. It has been for some time. As with everything, it's ongoing work to make sure that all of our practitioners are really engaged in that. But you know, the conversations that we're having with the services, the child's story starts with us the minute we get that first contact, that first referral through the front door, and we should be recording in information in a way that that child can understand. For all, should they come back to look at their records in the future, certainly for our children in care, we are the social workers will write their records to the children, so it's written in child-friendly language so that they can understand decision making about them. We work with foster carers to ensure that, and other carers to ensure that we are gathering information that pieces together that child's life story, their journey, and what's happened to them, and why. So it's absolutely a practice focus for us. It is work in progress.
I think again, it's about the quality of it as well, isn't it?
Absolutely about the quality
Yeah.
of it, and it's about
But
confidence.
what I saw was a book.
Yes.
So it's effectively a book that was passed to the child at 18.
Yeah.
Or when they wanted it. And it really, you know, told them a bit about mum and dad and why, you know, and like you say, it was in that language, that loving language, that this is why your mum couldn't keep you, or that sort of stuff. So that's what we're doing, because
that is what we're doing. We do create books, for example, for children where adoption is their plan for children leaving our care. And I have to say, I've seen for myself some absolutely fantastic practice on records, some beautifully written information to children about children. But it, you know, it's achieving consistency around that.
brilliant. No, thank you. I was just quite inspired by it, and never really dawned on me before. But you know, like I say, it's easy for all of us. We just go back to our own mum and dad. So, you know, what was I doing when I was 2 or 3? Or something, you know?
Yeah, and one of the most powerful things you can hear about is from somebody who's got care experience and has accessed their records at a later date. Whether that, and for some of those people, it is a poor experience and it's really difficult. Where we can get that right, it can be a really positive experience for them.
I've forgotten my list, but I know Councillor Julian was definitely the first one I saw. So
Thank you, Chair. Very good. What you've been saying about foster care, and that you've got more in the pipeline, and for the children to be in care. You just want to touch before we touch on it about the siblings. If they've only got one, you know, you've got others to get. Are they going to be close by? That sort of thing, because we don't want them outside Devon if we can help it, because this is where it's all gone pear-shaped before. So we've got to try and keep them, you know, so they're close at hand so they can see one another. Also, about the homes that you mentioned about Bideford, well, you've got the district council. They've got some serious money, so you can tap into them and see if they can relinquish some property. So that's good. And also, you know, it is critical because, you know, these children are vulnerable. It sounds fantastic what you're doing. I hope it is all going speedily along, and we want to see, you know, more and more that's happening. But yes, we just, as long as they're foster carers at Devon and non-profitable foster carers, and we're trying to avoid agencies. Agencies cost us an arm and a leg, and we just don't want to go there. I'd rather see that money poured back into the foster caring system, because that's where we need it, and we do need to have them in Devon, the children, because it benefits everybody, and I think that is the way forward. So thank you very much for that.
I guess I just wanted to offer.
I think there's a question there.
There was a question in there, sorry.
About siblings, and so I guess
Yes.
just to say, yes, our starting point is always to keep siblings together wherever we can. Obviously, with the current situation, that is not always possible, and there may sometimes be a reason not to, but we will always start from the point of we need to keep children with their siblings and close to their families. And the teams do work. Your team, Daniel, work really, really hard, don't they, to find homes that enable that to happen.
Yeah, and I suppose the sibling question illustrates one of the challenges around. There are some situations where we manage to identify a foster carer with the right skills to look after a sibling group of 3, and that is often the very best situation. There may be times where, for good reason, for those young people, they might benefit from being separate, or that blended options of care might be appropriate, where they're spending time in different kinship arrangements which are supported in different ways. I think that illustrates how much more we're trying to think about the best way to support young people, even if that doesn't always fit into a very neat and tidy box. We need more different options to make sure that young people aren't escalating through the system and ending up in residential homes. And the sibling example's a good example of where we often need to be really creative to make sure that where young people aren't able to live with siblings, we foster the right environments to make sure they have those links, and wherever possible they are living with their siblings. And it is a really clear focus for both the fostering service and the supervising social workers supporting foster carers, but also the child social worker, to make sure those families, wherever possible, are staying together. And we are really keen to try and expand our internal service so that we aren't reliant on independent fostering agencies more than we need to. There are situations where we do try and use independent fostering agencies rather than sending a young person into a residential home, because then the costs are even higher and the outcomes are not always as good as when they're in fostering arrangements.
I think it's refreshing when we hear the outcomes mentioned, because we used to have to push officers to hear that word. So I think, thank you for saying that, because I think that it was Councillor Richardson and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. KPI 13, percentage of care experienced people in education, employment or training. So it's good to see that over the last year there has been a slight increase, but over the past few months it's slightly dropping off and it's just fallen below the tolerance. I just wonder if there's any alarm bells that we should know about in terms of that? And just a question on the target of 63% for KPI 13. Is that in line with other local authorities? How was that figure of 63% made, and what does that mean? Is this more ambitious than other local authorities, less ambitious? Just like to know a bit about that, if that's all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. What I can report is that the number of care experienced people who are in education, training and employment has gone up since we wrote this report. So as of last week, it was at 60%. So we have improved further since the report was written, which is great news. And I think actually what we probably need to do is be more ambitious now with our target, because we have made a lot of progress. Our target was more in line with where other local authorities are or were heading in the direction of. I think now in Devon, we're in a place where we can be more ambitious, looking at where we've come from 45%. So thank you, we'll take that away.
I do apologise. I'm going to go to Councillor Bell next, because I think he was probably first on my list. And so.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to follow on from a couple of Councillor Julian's points very quickly, if that's okay. I've got, try to just fire off three very quick questions. Two of them are related. Thank you. Quickly then. So just with regards to obviously keeping children in Devon and not out of Devon, where do we stand on Wellington, Plymouth and Bude? I think would be the places that I'd go to. Secondly, I'll get this through quickly. North Devon Council, while not flush with money like Torridge, does have an excellent empty homes scheme. Well, Councillor Biederman mentioned that, of course, Devon County Council is apparently flush with derelict properties. There is an empty house, and I believe other district councils have them as well. And third, slightly different, but obviously congratulations on your mention that 20 to 25 new foster families. That's tear-jerkingly good. It can't all be down to Councillor Julian banging the drum so hard, but have we reflected on what is working and so well in this case? Oh yeah, I don't believe it to be a coincidence. I imagine that something is really pulling it through. Have we really reflected on what we should be doing even more of to get that up even higher next year? Thank you.
To start with empty homes, we are very keen to explore with any district and indeed with it in terms of our own assets, how best we can utilise those from a children's services and care experience young people perspective. We're already working with districts around how they might reallocate homes, around finding homes for our care experience young people and supporting young people into their own tenancies, both in terms of housing association infrastructure and also local authority run provision and tenancies, and as part of the developing programme with districts, there's a whole series of work streams about trying to reallocate some of those homes, and we would welcome any suggestion of any place where there might be infrastructure we could call on. In terms of close to Devon but not in Devon, we would, I mean, coming from Taunton, I'm not sure I could say that Wellington's a good place to live just from the local, but anywhere near Devon is clearly much better for many of our young people than going as far as we often end up sending young people to upper ends of the Midlands, up to the northeast, across to beyond London and Essex. We would much prefer our young people to be local, and for some of our young people, local is Wellington is closer for many of our young people if they're in Tiverton compared to the other side of Devon. So we would always, our measure of local is within Devon and within 30 miles, 20 miles, sorry, 20 miles. So we use the two together to try and make sure we're thinking creatively about the best homes for young people, both in, and we do recruit foster carers from outside our Devon border for that reason. And we sometimes, for good reason, where we've got children we support who have kinship relationships in other parts of the country, also look for homes in those areas. In terms of, we talked about distance care leavers and the assessment and recruitment process. We are tracking that more robustly and ambitiously. We've already put some investment in terms of our marketing work. We're working with the Southwest Hub, which has increased inquiries coming through to Devon. But we know we're not replacing the number of carers that we're currently losing. We'd have 201 foster carers in Devon, 250 if you include kinship carers. Many of our carers are older than 65 or 70. They've still got great homes and capacity to offer, but they're not all going to be caring for us for the next 30 or 40 years. We need to always be generating as many fostering homes as we can. And some of that's about how we promote fostering. Some of it's also about how we track the assessment process and try and make that both robust, but also timely and support potential carers as they go through that process. And some of it is also about how we support carers really effectively, because word of mouth is still the most powerful way we recruit carers. So if we are offering a good service to our foster carers, they will talk to other potential carers, and that will help us recruit more carers.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Councillor Bell. It was a really good question. I think it'd be useful for us as a committee to be, you know, there's no KPI on this, is there? So it would be really useful to be able to see, like you've just mentioned some figures, but I think it would be really useful to see what we've coming in, what we're going out. And I think for me is that offer, do special guardians still exist? Because you used to hear a bit about special guardians. We never seem to hear anything about them anymore. We hear about kinship carers. I'm not now, because we really are stretched for time, but I think it'd be useful to know what the offer is for foster carers against what the offer is for, in a very simple card, so that we can track across what a kinship special guardian gets against what a foster carer gets, and what's expected. Because I think it would be really, for me, to check that we have got that good offer there, and you know, what are those private companies, if you like, that are making a nice sum out of this? What are they offering there? You know, how do we keep more of our foster carers, or even attract foster carers to come and work for Devon? I don't necessarily want you to answer all that now, but I'd certainly like to, part of our recommendation around the KPI, so that we can clearly see how we're doing with attracting, you know, foster carers, maintaining them, and yeah.
Chair, I'll just jump in just to say that we have agreed that we will include a KPI around foster carers through the Improvement Partnership Board as well. So in the next iteration, that information will be in there, and we do still have a number of children that are placed in special guardianship arrangements, and that when we talk about kinship generally, we include within that special guardianship arrangements, but we can provide, you know, we do have breakdowns of those numbers.
Can it be really quick, Donna? I know.
I think it's really important to say we have a very detailed improvement plan for fostering. Daniel and myself are directly engaged with the team, attending their team meetings, which has been very inspiring. And I think it's really important to say publicly there is an end-to-end process of how well and how quickly we can work with our foster carers. We will be putting additional capacity into that, because at key points we haven't had enough resource to support the staff to do their work as quickly as possible. So I think it's really important that the details of that plan are public. And saying that we've not been doing our best in fostering is not linked to very hard-working, passionate team. It's the fact that we did not provide the right level of resources to that team at the right time so they could do their job very quickly. And that's because in the improvement plan, there were certain things that were our priority service area for improvement first, such as the front door and so on. But for 2026, this piece is a really important piece for us, and we're happy to bring the detail of that back.
And final speaker on this is Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Louise. I'm just looking at KPI 9 and 13 and just drawing some things between them. So just want to ask a couple of questions. One, the first one is about the number of 16 and 17-year-old in presenting as homeless, and 13 is the percentage of care experienced people in EET. And I noticed, well, first of all, at 13, there's a note about a rise in the number of care experienced people without recorded contact. And it does say that this is being addressed, but it just rang some alarm bells for me because of the vulnerability of these people. And just made me think also about do we know how many homeless 16 and 17-year-olds are also care experienced? And just like basically just wanted to ask some more questions about you know, that cohort, really, particularly the homeless 16 and 17-year-olds, and how do we maintain any contact with them, and what's the crossover between the two groups, if there is one?
It's a lot there. Sorry. So I guess the first thing for me just to say is that unfortunately KPI 9, as you probably have seen, is not up to date. So we are struggling to get that up to date information, and we're having conversations with our district colleagues to make sure that we can provide that. So it comes with, it is a warning. The most up to date there is back in March. It runs up to March 2025, that information. So it's not too helpful in that sense. KPI 9 doesn't include our care experienced young people. It will be those 16, 17-year-olds that are presenting as homeless at that age, if that makes sense. Some of them might then become children in our care, or they may be children who are supported to move into accommodation but don't necessarily become children in our care. That's a conversation and assessment that happens at the point at which they make contact with us, and that's done jointly with our district colleagues and with our social work teams. So it's quite complicated. In terms of our care experienced young people, we don't have any that are homeless or in bed and breakfast at the present time. We haven't had any care experienced young people who've been in bed and breakfast now for a number of months. That's been a really clear line that we've been holding, and we've been finding alternatives for them, as we talked about this morning. So the cohort that we're talking about in KPI 13 is our care experienced young people who are over the age of 18. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, members. That was really, really good, and officers again, and everybody working in children's services. Like I say, I'm fortunate enough to have visited, you know, as of quite a few of the committee, you know, a lot of staff, and as I said, I think it was in budget this morning, but apology, you know, they really do an incredible job from the PAs right through the system, and yeah, it obviously is quite clear that it's going in the right direction, and we look forward to following the progress and hearing back as we go forward. So I think it's always good, and there are, you know, some real good signs, and well done. And I think, as Councillor Gillian said, I think, you know, the day we can get down to that minimal amount of agency workers will be a really good day. But fantastic, the journey we're on so far to get it down, because we heard firsthand yesterday, myself and Councillor Brazil, how much the staff value not having agency managers, and so, you know, they're getting that consistent voice and support. So really, really good. Recommendations from that are no concern that KPI 9 data is not up to date and relies on data from Devon's district and city councils. That Cabinet supports a briefing note for children's scrutiny on the roles of kinship carers, foster carers and special guardianship, recognising the importance to families first and growing futures. Did we want to include anything around the housing, sort of the housing and the land property people, making sure that there's a engagement to understand that anything that we might be looking to sell off as an asset is not something that actually is an asset that could be used elsewhere? And it, like you say, it might well be not. It's just, you know, it would be nice to know that we are making sure that those stars align, if you like. And I think just to cover off, because I don't want Robin to get in trouble because I love him to bits. I'm sure Torridge aren't flush with money, but it was a flipping.
Got tons of money, Chair.
They're the only council in the world that are, well, in this country, if they are, but I'm sure their reserves are allocated to something. But I get what you're saying. Sir Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if the suggestion is helpful about the looking for assets that are already ours or whatever, and looking for those, whether that process needs to come from Children's Services or whether that needs to be inserted as a process with the assets team, and that they consider that as part of their process, and anything that fits the criteria is offered to, rather than us sort of looking at what they've got the other way around.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Absolutely. I thought that's what I said, but I probably didn't. Well, I think, obviously we want this process to be slick. So we don't want children's scrutiny in particular doesn't meet that often. So we do need a slick process so that when a report comes to the Land and Property Committee, for instance, we can see that actually Children's Services have looked at this. No, it's not an asset that's of use to them, if that makes sense. A bit like one of the other, EDI situation. Make sure that it's just been considered. Then on the land, yeah, they've been consulted. No use to them. On it goes, or yeah. You happy? Yeah. I think it was Councillor Lodge, then Councillor Julian, then Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that Councillor Beedham and I have been reassured that the Land and Property team do look at the options that are available for various properties. What we don't have visibility of, and we probably need to ask them, is whether they have a triage process, whether they have a checklist, and how they communicate that to teams like yourselves. So some visibility. So I think having that on the work programme will be very useful, just so we know that visibility does exist, but probably should be led by Land and Property, I would think.
Councillor Julian.
Yes, Chair. I know. We said that they're flush with money on topic, but they do have some money in there, and it would be advised to speak to them. They have some properties there. So, like you said, we want to be slick. We want to get the homes there for the youth or for the foster carers. We do need to move it on as quickly as possible, because we don't want to have holes in this system. Now it's all running really.
Yeah, I think to get that obviously the bit I was referring to is a property owned by Devon.
Yeah, well, okay.
In the centre of Bideford, so it was just so there's no confusion out there.
Okay.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Just to suggest perhaps we could write to Councillor Ewings as the chair of the Devon and Torbay Housing Task Force, and put some recommendations to her about utilising district council assets. Alternatively, write to the housing leads. Some of them are quite good, some of them are less good for each district council.
I'll just check because I think there's some work been going on around that closely with our district partners. So I don't want us to go and send in a letter that counteracts what's already going on. And I guess it's a mixed story. Some districts are engaging really well and already helping, and other districts maybe not.
I think our district colleagues will welcome your support because it is a partnership. I would also actually consider that the letter encourages the support of other public sector partners, because we should have one public sector estate, and there's lots of buildings that I've noticed around Devon linked to our partners that I think could be positive opportunities for conversion to stable living homes for both foster carers, respite care and children's homes, because sometimes we have the challenge that many people come forward and want to foster, but some of the regulations around the number of bedrooms and so on. So I think we really need to push forward an innovative practice in this area. for example, there's lots of police buildings that
I was
myself have noticed.
I was
And
thinking of the
police-
police station in Barnstable, right next to our social services thing. And I know it's got rack in the roof, but you know, considering what it would cost us to buy land, build a building, and everything else, it might well be cheaper for us to have the building and stick a new roof on it.
I think if we could get more partners involved in this, we should be looking at public sector reform, one public estate, with particularly, you know, tenancies such an issue for our care leavers or our young people who have maybe been in custody, and some of the rules around some of the RSLs are quite rigid. So I do think there's more we could do quickly with some of those public estate partners involved.
So how do we get a full list of those public? I mean, I think that is a recommendation, is how we get a list of empty public buildings that
I'm engaging with partners. All our partners have an estate strategy. I just think it's making a direct ask that as corporate parents, they support us with this challenge. The police have a plan, the NHS have a plan, but I think our public sector estate, the wonderful nature of it is that there are buildings in all communities that could be converted if everybody could commit to this as corporate parents. And much quicker than having to find land, build buildings, and actually in terms of void buildings, there are a lot of buildings that have been driving past for a long time that haven't had any development, and I'm sure communities would like to see them developed and used rather than empty.
No, I mean, it's fantastic. No, I think we've, well done, Councillor Bell. It's opened up a really different line of thought. So, Councillor Lodge.
Just very quickly, I mean, while we're on that subject, and to haul you two guys into this, I think there are buildings as well that might be empty, which would be suitable for alternative provision, because there are a lot of people trying to offer alternative services and have got nowhere to go, much like me in my front room.
Whispering to, so I'm going to close this down, and Lou just told me to give her a second because she's now going to put all our recommendations on the screen, because we sort of got quite excited towards the end there. So it was really good. And thank you all for that. And obviously I'll offer apologies for Councillor Jeffries. You'll notice he had to leave just now, but I knew that's why I was trying to rush us along, as I knew he had a really important meeting at 4 o'clock. So that's why he left us, is that he's had to go and join another important meeting. So obviously he's not just stormed out because of what you were saying or anything like that. Through my ignorance, obviously, obviously I think Donna was thinking police buildings. I was thinking police buildings because of the one in Barnstable. Would the Devon and Torbay Combined Authority be the right body? Because it would just be useful to know the full list, wouldn't it? Or I guess even if we go to members and say, what empty buildings are in your community that have been sat there doing not a lot that's owned by a public body?
So should we ask our police and crime commissioner what spare buildings she's got and which ones does she want to sell?
I was just about to say her own, sounds like it, but yeah.
I think the one at Barnstable, Chair, is the reason the police moved out of there because it was asbestos, and that's why they had to move out. Because
No, I know exactly. It was racked actually, but the point we were trying to make is it might be cheaper for us to acquire. You know, they obviously need to get rid of it. It's costing them money to. It might be cheaper for us to put that right than to buy land, build a building, everything else. You know, it might be completely unsuitable, but it's certainly something we should be investigating because. I said our last substantive item coming up. So you've done really well. It's been a very long day. So really appreciate everybody's durability, I guess is the right word. So this is the and it's good to finish on a high. So this is the Ofsted Monitoring and Visit Report 2025. I assume that that Becky's going to lead on this now that Richard's had to go, but it really is quite a good news story. And sorry, all Councillor Brazil, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know who wants to speak to it, but.
Well, yeah, no, it should have been Richard, but he's not here. But really, I mean, it speaks for itself. We've already raised it at the full council meeting, but just to reiterate, I mean, my enormous thanks to Becky and her team and everyone that has made a massive difference. But also just to all members of the council, all councillors that we've, you know, that we, like I said, as I've said before, and I'll repeat it again, that we've made children our top priority in this council for this administration, and we are beginning to deliver on that. So I think, you know, I hope that all councillors take satisfaction in that, that we can make a difference, and we are making a difference, and we've got a fantastic team, and we're doing a great job, and this is hopefully the first of many letters and reports that endorses our approach and what we're doing. So, you know, well done, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Anything you want to add to that, Becky?
I don't think so. I can, you know,
You don't want to give yourself self-praise and like that?
I think it is just really positive, and I think it does reflect the hard work of everyone involved. And you know, I think one of the first lines, one of the headline findings is exactly as Councillor Brazil's just said: political, corporate, and operational leaders in Devon share that same determination and ambition for care experienced people in Devon. And I think that absolutely came through in the monitoring visit. It was a really positive experience for staff that were involved. You know, they enjoyed their conversations with inspectors. They received some really positive feedback there and then, so in real time as part of the inspection. So, you know, that enables us to move forwards now positively. And I guess, as I touched on when we were talking about some of the key performance indicators, you know, we have held that position that we were in when the inspection came in November. We continue not to have any care experienced young people in bed and breakfast. Our performance in relation to education and training and employment continues to improve. We know we've got work to do still around accommodation, around making sure that we continue to provide opportunities for our care experienced young people. We've got work to do around health services for them, but everything continues to move in the right direction. And we are, just to reassure everyone, we're absolutely focused on the two areas that came through as further work needed around reflective supervision and management oversight and responsive planning. Not just for our care experienced young people, that's a piece of work across the whole of the service that we're focused on.
No, thank you, Becky, and thank you, Julian, and thank you on behalf of all of us, because I think it really is quite impressive, and we've got it here in black and white in front of us. But I did go to the improvement board very recently, and sorry to if you're watching the DFE, I've forgotten your name, but you know the chap that's our DFE partner was quite clear that, you know, how impressed he is with the political and officer leadership and how much everybody is pulling together to drive this forward. So it's really quite positive to hear that. And obviously, like I say, I think what we can't do is take our foot off the gas. We've just got to keep moving forward. So thank you all. And I think that's just a note. Looking at my boss, yeah, we'll just note that and move on. But thank you very much. Next item is the matters for information. They've all been previously circulated. Is there anything that? Oh, I've missed the work programme. Feels like we've done I do apologise. Sorry. Yeah, if Louise could just talk to the work programme. I think we've added to it somewhat today.
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair. I think, you know, there's a lot added to the work programme from this morning's session. So we will go away, update the work programme. There will need to be a prioritisation around that. Best practice around 2 items per meeting. I know we're slightly over that today, but we will work with the Chair and Vice Chair, update that, bring that back to you all. There's been a joint adults and children's, there's been a joint standing overview group on the joint adults and children's systems replacement project. So a report will come back to all members on that being held with further work on that. There's visits that are being organised as at the moment. So you'll all receive update invitations on that. So building on the visit to practitioners in Exeter and East, there'll be more of those across the county. And we've talked about school visits recently. And we're also looking at task groups. Obviously, that was talked about this morning. So a revised work programme will be sent around to all committee members, probably in about 2 weeks' time. There's still 2 more scrutiny committees to go.
Yeah, I just adding on that. I think, you know, those visits for me are really, really vital. Nothing against these people. It's wonderful to hear from our heads of service, but also hearing it right on the ground, so that we can correlate from what Becky tells us or Jack tells us to what Jim and John tell us at the front line. Really useful. I think, you know, if you've got somewhere you want to visit yourselves, you don't have to be a whole group visit. Please contact Louise. I mean, I wouldn't suggest you barge into a school or social services or anywhere, you know, so that we make sure that we get you an invite and make sure they know you're coming. B, we can capture what you've found and what you've heard, so that, you know, we can sort of then bring it all together, so we can see if it's a common theme or just an issue in that particular area. Really useful. And I think it and it would be good to do that visit to a good school, inclusive school together, because it just builds our relationships with each other, get us talking and challenging each other in that informal setting, which is also useful. Okay, you all happy with that? Oh, Councillor Bell.
Sorry, Chair, very quickly. We had a conversation a little while ago, just to mention, I know Councillor Brazil has been very interested in this as well. School nurses, I believe you were suggesting a masterclass on this school nurse system, because of course it's something that has disappeared over recent years, and it's something that perhaps, I know the NMC guidelines would certainly want to be brought back, or sorry, informally NMC guidelines would want to see brought back.
Yeah, no, thank you. It would have come to me eventually, not today, but eventually. I don't know if that's something that we need to be doing jointly with health. I'm not sure, but it's certainly something that needs to be looked at, because I think we've heard it again, is what we hear on a visit. I think it was a secondary school, reasonably large, only see a school nurse every 2 weeks for half a day, and you know, they have to sort of go through all their children that probably needs that time with the school nurse to prioritise them. Yeah, so I think it would be useful. Thank you. I think probably a masterclass in the first instance would be useful. What do now? Oh, I can do that bit now, can I? Yeah. I was dying to get that bit. So obviously the last item is items previously circulated, to be aware of items previously circulated. And our next meeting is on the 16th of March 2026, commencing at 10:30. Anything you want to say extra to that, or any members got anything about things that have been circulated to you? We're all thinking, what have been circulated? But you will have been circulated stuff. Risk registers, etc. Thank you. And before I close the meeting, there's one final little duty I have. There's a wonderful lady that sits amongst us very quietly, very efficiently, very diligently, very brilliant at keeping notes and recording things, and she was desperate that nothing was said apparently, but we couldn't let
tell her.
we couldn't. Oh, did you? We couldn't let that go. So, Wendy, this is your very last children's scrutiny meeting because you're going to be retiring and leaving us. Oh, yeah, it's a bigger R than that. Yeah. But no, but Wendy, thank you ever so much for all your support across the council at various meetings, and even just in the corridor. You're always a cheery hello and a good morning. And I'm sure members have felt that when they've bumped into you. Well, I never come here on a Monday. But yeah, no, thank you very much for all you've done, and we all wish you really well for your retirement when it comes. When is it you actually go? Oh wow, so yeah, brilliant. Well, I hope you have a wonderful retirement. Enjoy yourself. So thank you all, and yeah. Safe travel home, everybody, and